So quick little disclaimer here. All of the terms that I'm going over here, or the slang, were all sourced from a WikiFur article using 3 different quote-unquote furry dictionaries. I've cross-referenced a bunch of them to make sure that I am finding the most accurate or up-to-date definition. However, if any of these appear to be out of date by the time you viewed this video, please let me know in the comments. Thanks!
Okay, so furry slang. What the heck is furry slang? We have slang words? Yes, we do. So one thing you might want to keep in mind with some of these is the definitions I sourced from a variety of sources. In cases where I could not find 2 or more instances of the same word, I struck it out, because if there's only really one definition, then I don't really have a way to cross-check it, and it doesn't really seem fair. So let's go into some of the weirder slang in the community that you may or may not have known existed, what it means, so that if you hear it, you know what people are talking about. All right, let's go. So, gray muzzle. Obviously kind of an easier one to pick up on. So a gray muzzle more distinctly refers to an older person within the fandom. So a gray muzzle has been traditionally considered someone who is over the age of 30. So by that definition, I am 2 years away from technically being a gray muzzle. But some people also use it to define people who've been in the furry fandom for a really long time. Depending on which definition you like to go by, it either means an older furry or a more experienced furry in the fandom. Either way, it is not a negative connotation, it is positive. Someone who is a gray muzzle in the community might have a little bit more respect, might have a few more years under them, and if you get lost at the con and you don't really know what to do, generally speaking, a gray muzzle might be a good person to go up to and ask if they have a spare program, where a certain part of the convention is, where the nearest volunteer is to help you find the Headless Lounge. It's generally a good connotation, and it's not a bad thing to be called a gray muzzle. It just means you're more experienced and maybe not as young as you once were. But it's not bad. It's not a bad thing. Okay, so a SQUICK. This one was a little tricky to find an exact definition for. Some people have slightly more colorful definitions than others. But from what I could tell, a SQUICK is, well, squicking. I don't know if it's a noun or a verb. I have had conflicting reports, but a SQUICK is a loud, obnoxious, annoying sound or action that is generally thought to be embarrassing or publicly humiliating, or just not a positive thing to do in public around non-furs or even around furs. So a good example of a SQUICK situation is, look at all these news reports about furries and furry conventions where these poor reporters try to come in and understand anthropomorphic conventions with pretty much the equivalent of a post-it note of information to go on. Now, sometimes these news reports go in with good intentions and they just want to report on what's happening and who people are and, just an explanation for their viewers of what this is. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they have a preconceived bias and they just want to show their viewers how freaking weird we are. We're weird. I mean, wearing a fursuit is generally kind of weird to most people, but what's not going to really help that is if the first instance a non-fur meets you in fursuit is if you try to be as humiliatingly awkward as possible, and that's kind of where the word SQUICK kind of comes from. It's from people saying things or doing things that are going to induce a cringe and don't look to have a positive outcome. It's not generally a good thing. You don't want to squick or get into squicking situations or do anything squicky just because it just doesn't really set a good precedent for the rest of us. If the first interaction some non-fur has with you is you chasing them and telling them that you want to consume their soul, even if that's the character that you're going for, and even if that's the way you act in suit, maybe start with something a little bit more positive, because if that's the first impression they get of furries, they're probably not going to want to get any further interactions with furries, which is kind of a bummer because we do some really cool shit like fundraising and spreading awareness of stuff. Like, I know most cons have a charity of choice and they raise a lot of money for. A lot of them work really closely with, adoption of animals, helping to rescue former service dogs, like all kinds of cool shit. So if the first interaction they have with a furry is some kid running up to them going, "Daddy!" or, "Oh my god, let's yiff!" It's really not the first, that's not the first interaction you want to have. So this word is a negative, and it's not something you really want to do because it's not really pleasant or comfortable for anyone there, including other furries. So just do yourself a favor and try not to do what this slang term is about. Please? Okay, thanks. Okay, so burned furs and frozen furs. If you are a younger furry, these are going to sound really bizarre. You probably have not heard them. You've probably heard that, oh, I'm a burned fur or proud burned fur, whatever. But there was this movement a while back with the burned furs and freezing furs or the frozen furs or whatever. But the long and short of it is there were two camps of thought in the furry community. There was the burned furs who basically would go after anyone that they were not okay with. This could be around the realm of people who were overly out there with their sexual interests, or they would be really, really out there about their fetishes, and they'd probably be the ones you saw running around in like the latex suits and puppy gear and proudly walking around with their mersuits and advertising the fact that they use them for that. Like, kind of like that. And like the burned furry movement was about publicly outing and shaming people who did that. But it got a little out of hand. Not all members of that group had the same thoughts. So while some considered it just the act of being like overly fetishized in public, others went a little farther and also were kind of homophobic and not accepting. It came under the guise of trying to clean up the community, but it kind of veered in like a not very good way. While I'm all for cleaning up our public perception, I don't really condone running around in fetish gear in public or even really at cons. I just find it very uncomfortable. Going as far as being a homophobic and unaccepting and just outwardly shaming people for it is, for stuff that's like still legal, that's kind of like a no-no for me. If you're doing something illegal that hurts animals, that is not good. Like that is genuinely not good. But if you've got some kinks, that's cool. Have your kinks, I don't really care, but keep it like PG on the con floor and in public, because that is how the public's going to see us, and it doesn't do us any good if the only thing that they connect to furries is sexual deviancy. So just don't. On the other hand of that movement, you had the frozen furs or freezing furs, or I don't know, the other side. And they were for full-blown acceptance of like everything. They didn't believe in burning furs for some of those devious, more like deviancy skews, and they wanted to be accepting of everyone, and they were trying to be the counter. So they didn't believe in hating on other people for being like overly sexual in public, but they also kind of were also answering the more wonky side of burn furs of being anti-gay and unaccepting of things that actually probably should have been accepted. But unfortunately, some of their wording got a little wonky, and in certain representations of what they've said online, they also had some members that, didn't think that you should be mad at other furries for things like zoophilia and bestiality, and it just got really convoluted and not very good. So neither side really worked out in the end. It didn't work. Both sides probably had good intentions, admittedly, the frozen furs were trying to combat the fact that some of the burned furs were, or the people burning furs were hating on public deviancy, but then like the burned furs were probably also trying to get the public to stop thinking about us as sexual deviants. So both had good intentions. Neither did a great job, and in the end, I believe both are now defunct. But if anyone ever mentions burned furs or frozen furs, now you kind of know where those come from. I don't believe either group is really active anymore at all, but you'll still see at some cons that some of those ideas have not died down. There are a lot of furries who don't like it when fetish gear is worn on the con floor, myself included, and don't think that, we should be portrayed as these hypersexual, crazy maniacs. And at the same point, you also have some people who think it's completely fine to have that on the con floor. It's their expression, it's their right. They should be able to do it. I agree, you should be able to do whatever you want as long as it's legal and doesn't hurt an animal. But I do think in public spaces and places where children will be present, toning it down is appropriate. But that's just where that essentially came from. And for the last term I'm going to go over, we're going to talk about popufur fucking again, because it's still a thing and it still exists, even though I don't think it should. Popufur. So, popufur was a term that got started because of certain people who typically had fursuits becoming more popular than other people because of the popularity of either their suits, their art, or whatever else the fuck they did in the community. And it became a negative term used by some others to kind of grumble about the fact that these more popular furries were getting more attention, and they were kind of jealous, and so they weren't happy about the fact that these people were getting more attention. So they started going down with popufurs, which is fucking stupid in an accepting community to go, down with popufurs, and it's just fucking, the whole thing is dumb. It's dumb. Certain furries in the community have kind of made fun of that by wearing shirts that say popufur. I know I've seen like Buddy in like one or two of them. I'm all for like reclaiming the word and trying to make it not negative, but it's just genuinely a stupid word, in my opinion. I don't believe that anyone's actually popufur. I believe that certain fursuit makers have a knack for making very popular fursuit designs, or certain artists have a knack for making very popular art. And in the sense, or I guess, in creating very popular art, maybe certain characters that they've drawn have become more popular because it's a very well-liked design. Now, do I think that warrants the term popufur? No, I don't think so. I don't think it warrants the term at all. I think what we need to start just recognizing is certain fursuit makers and certain artists are very, very talented at what they do. If one or two characters that they have brought to life have become extremely well-liked and popular, it is not a negative reflection on the person wearing the suit. What I think should be happening here is people should be giving the kudos to the actual artist or fursuit maker or what have you that brought that character to life, because what people are really responding to is that art or that fursuit, and then rather than openly hating it and being salty that the person wearing it's very popular now, you should be giving serious kudos to that fursuit maker or artist. And you know what? If it bothers you so much that that character is so popular and you want to have like a very popular character and you have the money and you really, really like fursuits, you know what? Rather than shit on the fursuiter or the person whose character has become very popular, why don't, this is a novel idea, you commission that artist or fursuit maker who made that highly popular character? Will you magically become popular overnight? No. But what you could be doing there is essentially getting that same quality that everyone else seems to be liking and supporting an artist who, you know what, did a really bang-up job on that character. So rather than hating on the fact that someone has more popularity than you, maybe get yourself a fursuit. If, that fursuit that people are really liking had great features, why don't you go support that artist? Do something positive for a change. Or you know what, you want more people to notice you in the community? Start making YouTube videos. Don't like making videos? Start drawing art. Don't know how to draw? Start doing something really creative and positive that helps the community grow. Just a thought. Just a thought. I still maintain that poppy fur is a stupid word, but it's a slang term. It exists. It's in our community. That's poppy fur. Okay, so those are some slang terms in our community and what they mean. I know not all of them were positive, and unfortunately a lot of the slang terms that exist in our community aren't positive. We tend to be an infighting group, so I'd love for that to stop, but obviously it's not going to happen overnight. But here are some terms that exist and what they mean. Have a great day. Goodbye. Bye.